Good day, this is Terry DeFazio, and you're watching Dial It Up. Today, my guest is Katherine Sims. She is a candidate and she is running for House of Representatives from Orleans Lamoille district, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's good to have you back on. We had you on once before doing the Farm to School program, and it's good to have you on because I'm trying to get as many people that are actually in contested races. So I want to ask you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invitation.
What do you see as the major issues that are facing Vermonters, and specifically your district?
Yeah. So I have been knocking on hundreds, if not thousands, of doors this summer and fall, and the top priorities and issues that I hear on the doors are reducing property taxes, growing our economy to create more job opportunities and help address the opiate epidemic, and making sure that we have local control for our schools and around alternative energy sightings.
Okay. I'm assuming that centers around the wind towers.
That certainly is something that comes up.
Yeah.
A lot.
So recently I get the local newspaper, the Express, and I'm seeing a lot of mail endorsing your opponent and endorsing you. How much of that have you seen, or how much have you heard about, or how many people have talked to you about, what issues you like to, you discuss?
Yeah, so certainly I think our race is drawing a lot of attention because I think, many voters in the district are looking for a new voice, a change, and it was exciting. We had a debate in Westfield on Monday, and we packed the community center, and so it's great to see voters in the district really engaging in this race and having an opportunity to talk about the issues that matter.
Yeah, I would agree, because what I'm finding is the crying shame is that there's too much voter apathy. Mm-hmm. Even still. So when you get a packed house like that, and that was going to lead me to a question I was going to ask later, but I'll ask it now. How do you think that went for you, and what do you think was important that got discussed or got left out?
Yeah, so I think it was a great opportunity to really talk about the issues that matter. I mean, I think it was a very different debate than what we've seen nationally in terms of circus where folks are attacking each other. The issues, or this debate really gave us an opportunity to focus on the issues that matter, like how do we think about the budget? How do we grow our economy? Where do folks stand on carbon tax and supporting our schools? And really appreciated the opportunity to highlight some of the key differences between myself and my opponent.
Mm-hmm. So, well, that goes down to another issue down here too. What is your feeling about the carbon tax?
Yeah, so I would not support any legislation that disproportionately impacts rural Vermonters, like the carbon tax. Okay. I think we can move forward to a more sustainable future, but in a way that doesn't make it difficult for Vermonters to pay their bills and put food on the table. So I do not support the carbon tax. So
how would that disproportionately affect us up here? How would that do that? Because I'm not even sure myself.
So I think any tax that focuses on gas consumption negatively impacts folks who have to drive long distances to get to I live 45 minutes away from a grocery store and commute half an hour, and I've met many Vermonters who live in this area but drive to Burlington every day because that's where the job opportunities are. And so adding as much as 80 cents a gallon to the cost of gas would be a huge economic challenge for many in our community.
Yeah, I can see that.
And we don't really have any, transportation alternatives here. So again, I think it would disproportionately impact rural communities where driving distances is, part of our everyday life.
Yeah, because Burlington is experiencing sprawl. You essentially have about 6 or 7 towns that all border each other, so it's fairly easy to get around from one place to another, whereas here you're a long distance from a lot of places. So what is your stance on, say, property taxes overall?
Yeah, so I think property taxes are too high and need to be reduced for the majority of Vermonters. One thing we know about Vermont is that the average Vermonters are paying about 3% of their income towards property taxes. But the few who earn over $200,000 a year are only paying 1 to 2% of their income towards property taxes. And so if we all paid our fair share, the majority of Vermonters would see their taxes go down, which is something I think they sorely need. I think we need an equal playing field. It's only fair.
Yes, and why is it that people earning that much pay lower property taxes? Why is that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have a pretty outdated tax policy here in Vermont.
Okay.
And there was a bill introduced last year that sought to modernize and address this issue. And if I were in Montpelier, I would work hard to make sure it would pass.
Okay. Do you remember what that bill was?
I don't remember the number off the top of my
Okay.
head, but it was the Polina Pearson tax bill.
Well, that would figure. Anthony Polina, I know him. I've met him a couple of times.
Yeah.
He's a pistol. So the other issue that has come up quite a bit lately is the marijuana bill.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I believe marijuana is decriminalized, correct?
Yes.
But now there's legislation that wants to make marijuana legal. And what is your stance on that?
Yeah, so I think that actually connects directly to property tax relief. I think it's something that we should consider because primarily of the opportunity to generate more revenue for our state. At the same time, I think we would need to go slow and to learn from other states who have already gone down this path and make sure that we find the best fit for Vermont. We know that marijuana is a part of a burgeoning underground market right now, and we have an opportunity to bring it into a well-regulated setting where we can focus on law enforcement, enforcing age limits, and ensuring that we can keep our communities safe. The industry is estimated at about $100 to $200 million in economic activity right now. Mm-hmm. And so that market exists, but we don't have an opportunity to generate any revenue from it, which is estimated at between $25 to $75 million in potentially new tax revenue every year. And so by creating a regulated cannabis market, we have, I think, an opportunity to potentially benefit our communities by raising more revenue, creating jobs, and supporting law enforcement's efforts to address substance abuse. And so I don't think it's something that we want to rush into. Others are already doing that, and we can learn from that. But I think if we can focus on the health and education and job creation for our community, fewer will turn towards drugs, but at the same time we can potentially access new revenues that can help alleviate tax burdens for the average Vermonter.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, because I was a substance abuse counselor for 11 years, and I've often said this when people have asked me about the same thing, and I've said, you're going to alleviate some problems, but you're going to create some others, because some people will see legalization as, oh, it's safe now. Right. And it's, we saw the same thing with prohibition. It didn't work, and when wealthy businessmen said, hey, why don't you just make this legal and tax it? Because we're tired of paying taxes. So I think that somewhat ties into what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think there's actually a strong correlation between alcohol. A long time ago, we decided to handle alcohol in a well-regulated environment. Certainly there are some challenges around alcohol in our society, but the vast majority of people consume alcohol responsibly. And then we deal with the ramifications of those who don't. So, no one is suggesting that we go back to banning alcohol and moving into a prohibited environment, because we know that would lead towards more crime, more underground markets, and more criminal activity, and that's not something we want to see.
Yeah. People used to ask me why alcohol was legal and marijuana wasn't. I gave them the simple answer. Most of us here our ancestry is from Northern Europe, and that's part of the culture. For example, if you go over to the Middle East, hashish is part of their culture, but alcohol is totally banned. So it's a matter of culture.
Right. Yeah. So it can be a real change in way of thinking for folks, but I think it's something that we should explore.
Mm-hmm. I tend to agree with you. Where do you stand on the healthcare bill, or whatever that's turned into? I'm not even sure what it's turned into anymore.
So. The cost of healthcare is really burdening our schools, our towns, our businesses, and our families. And I think an economy that works for all Vermonters must include healthcare that is affordable, efficient, and rewards providers for value, not volume. I think Vermont Health Connect has been a real disaster. We've spent $200 million on a website that doesn't work. And so, moving forward, we need to get the costs under control, and I think we need to simplify the system. I would support expanding Dr. Dinosaur to cover Vermonters up to the age of 26. Next, I think we need to go slow and not rush into an all-payer model. I have some real questions about that, like what are the administrative costs? How would doctors get funded? What would the cost of commercial insurance be? I think we have an opportunity to move away from a fee-for-service model to one that focuses on healthcare outcomes, but we can't afford to get that wrong. So I think we want to take our time, but we need to move towards a healthcare system that is affordable and effective for all Vermonters and doesn't reward providers for writing more prescriptions or having more visits. That, we can do better here.
And more unnecessary tests,
procedures, yeah.
which I've seen happen too. It's interesting, and I'd like to know your feeling on this. And it's a one-payer system rather than a one-payer system, a universal healthcare system. For example, Medicaid or Medicare for everybody.
Yeah.
Every other industrialized nation has done it. I don't know why we can't. Can you see why is there a stumbling block here?
Yeah. So I think we are taking steps in that direction, and I think that that's important because it values health outcomes, not charging for services. But I think a lot of it comes back here to campaign finance reform. I think we need to get the money out of politics so that politicians are there representing the best interests of their constituents, not big businesses, corporate special interests, and big donors.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And I mean, what's happening on the national scene, I'm very happy that it isn't happening in Vermont on that scale. Yeah. I'm imagining some of it's happening, but not on that scale. I could be wrong.
Yep, actually. We've seen each of the candidates for governor raising over $1 million here in Vermont. And so that's a lot of money in a small state that I would argue could be better spent on other things, like in treating our opiate epidemic. In fact, related to campaign finance reform, Vermont Poly or the Vermont Political Blog came out with a story today talking about big corporate donors in small Vermont House races, including my own. My campaign has been fueled by, a grassroots campaign fueled by over 100 small donors, and I'm the only candidate in my race who's not accepting corporate contributions because I want to be the voice of the people and I don't want to be beholden to big donors and special interests, while my opponent has received over $5,000 contributions, the maximum allowable from individuals and businesses like oil man Skip Valley, who's currently being charged with price fixing in the Burlington area. And so the $5,000 that have been given by special interests to my opponent have had a dramatic impact on our race. And I think we need to do more to get the money out of politics so that folks are really representing their constituents. And Maine has a publicly funded campaign finance model that's working well for them, and I think Vermont should look at something like that.
Yeah, I know that on the national level, at one time, the McCain-Feingold bill came around. I don't know if that ever got passed, but what eventually got passed had so many loopholes in it that everybody broke it anyway. Yeah.
I mean, here in Vermont, political parties can give unlimited contributions to candidates, and that I don't think that represents Vermont values.
Well, I would tend to agree with you. So you're in favor of campaign finance?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have been for years, and because I think one of the things that hurt it, I don't know if you agree with this or not, you can tell me if you agree or not, but I think that Citizens United was a horrific thing.
A business is not the equivalent of an individual.
Yeah, and isn't it funny? They want the same rights as an individual to give as much money as they want, but when they break the law, no one goes to jail, do they?
Right.
Because you can't put a corporation in jail. Isn't that interesting how that works? I wanted to ask you this. What do you feel makes you a better choice to go to Montpelier and represent your constituents?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, I founded Green Mountain Farm to School, which supports local farms and gets good food to kids. And with an incredible team, I've built an organization that employs 12 people. We've generated $1 million worth of sales for our local farmers and food producers, and we've educated thousands of kids about healthy food choices. And so now I'm ready to bring my passion for making a difference to Montpelier. because I think Montpelier doesn't, or it's often easy for Montpelier to ignore the realities that we face here in rural communities. We value our local schools, and they try to force us to consolidate. Our families are struggling, but economic development continues to leave rural communities like ours behind. And they don't see how a lack of access to high-speed internet and cell phone service hurts our small businesses or industrial wind projects divide our communities. So I'm running for state representative because I think we deserve better. I think it's time for a new voice in the State House who understands the challenges that rural communities like ours face and is willing to do something about it. So I want to work tirelessly to grow our local economy, support working Vermonters, and make sure that government works for all Vermont, including rural communities like ours.
Mm-hmm. Specifically, how would you grow the economy?
Yeah, so I think it's time for new leadership that's really focused on the economy, because small businesses are the hearts of our communities, and when they grow and thrive, our communities thrive. Just look at Burton Snowboards, Gardener's Supply, Dealer.com, Ben & Jerry's. They all started as small Vermont businesses.
Yes,
and,
they did.
You know, that's how we grow our economy. But we can't have rural economic development without access to high-speed internet and cell phone service. It's a shame that so many homes and businesses in our community still lack access to affordable high-speed internet and cell phone service. I mean, it's simple. Connectivity helps support our entrepreneurs, our small businesses, and our telecommuters. And when they don't have access to high-speed internet and cell phone service, they're competing in the digital age with a handicap. You know, and at the same time, so many of our kids are being left behind because they're missing educational opportunities. So it reminds me of, you know, rural electrification, when it took strong advocates to make sure that power was brought to every single home on the dirt road in a rural community. And I think internet and cell phone service represent the sort of modern version of that critical infrastructure. And so I don't think it's an issue that we can just say no to. I think it takes a strong voice who will fight to make sure that every home and business in our community is connected, and I want to be that strong voice for our community.
You brought up two points that as you're talking, I'm thinking of things that you've said that actually tie into all of this. When the people say that they want to get the government out of their life, they seem to forget that there are several projects that have come around that have actually benefited a lot of people. For example, the Tennessee Valley Authority. There was no electricity in that area until this took over. Do you see a core group of constituents that you're going to run into that don't want anything to change? They don't want any progress. Yep. Do you see that? Yeah,
so that's certainly something I hear on the doors, and I understand that you know, folks feel like they're working really hard and it's getting harder and harder for them to get by, and so we need to do more to create economic opportunities so folks don't feel squeezed in that way. You know, and at the same time, you know, government can play an important role in our lives. You know, I drive to work every day, and I'm thankful that there's a road that you know, I can drive on, and that it's plowed for me in the winter. And I'm grateful that I have a library and a post office that, you know, delivers my mail every day. And so there are some really important services that government provides, but at the same time, we can't live beyond our means. We know that the economy here in Vermont has been growing at about 2% every year, with low and middle income wages not really growing at all.
Yeah.
I know, in meantime, at the same time, state spending has been growing at a rate of about 5% every year over the last 6 years. And so that's not a sustainable path. You know, I'm a small business. You know, I run a small business, and so I know about creating budgets and meeting revenue targets and spending within your means. And so those are skills that I would want to bring to Montpelier, because I think, you know, we need, unlike my opponent, I wouldn't just vote no on the budget. I would want to work proactively to make sure that we focus our limited resources on the areas that best reflect the priorities and values of Vermonters.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I hear a lot of, and I hear a lot of lawmakers, not just in your district, but all over, they talk about having to butt heads with a supermajority that exists down in Montpelier. What is your stance on that, and how would you deal with that?
Yeah, I think regardless what party you're for or from, or it's your obligation and responsibility to work hard to get things done on behalf of your constituents. And that means listening, that means collaborating, that means compromising, building relationships with folks of all parties to to get things done. And I wouldn't be beholden to either party down there. I would be a strong, independent voice for our community. And these are lessons learned that I've learned through my work at Green Mountain Farm to School. When we first wanted to bring good food to kids from local farms, there was a lot of folks who said, well, kids will never want to eat rutabaga or kale. Food service won't want to change where they're buying food from. Teachers don't have time to bring kids out into the garden. And so there was a lot of reasons why stuff couldn't get done. But by listening, understanding folks' challenges, understanding what they needed to have their lives and their jobs improved, and compromising and working together and building coalitions, we were able to get good work done so that now we're positively impacting our farms, getting kids out in the garden where they can learn about math and science in a hands-on way, and they're excited about eating kale. And so I know how to work together with folks from all different perspectives to get stuff done, and that's what I would look forward to doing in Montpelier.
Well, you bring up a good point there too, and that is the fact that you will come up with an idea and you will hear all the reasons why you can't. And when I used to run into this in other situations, it was like, I'm tired of hearing what I can't do. Why don't you tell me what I can do?
Right. Right. I see every challenge as an opportunity, and I look forward to showing up on town meeting, if elected, and reporting on all the things that I've done to make the lives in our community stronger.
Okay. How much campaigning have you been doing, and what does it look like?
Yeah. So I'm really enjoying the campaigning process. I love living in a state where going door to door is the most effective campaign strategy. I mean, how often do you get to knock on your neighbors' doors and ask them what's on their mind and hear about the issues that matter to them? It's inspiring and motivating and, at times heartbreaking and, all of that. I take all those stories with me, and they motivate me to be a strong voice for our community.
I'm going to ask you this because I asked your opponent this, and I would ask anybody this. What is your stance on gun legislation?
Yeah, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. Vermont has a long, peaceful tradition of gun ownership, and I don't think we need any changes to current gun laws here in Vermont.
Okay. And what other organizations do you belong to?
Yeah. So I'm the founder and director of Green Mountain Farm to School.
Okay.
I also sit on a number of boards, including the Vermont Land Trust and the Vermont Council on Rural Development. Within my own community, I've been an auditor for the town of Westfield for a number of years when I lived in that town. I'm also the proud organizer of the Lowell Holiday Craft Market, where we get together artisans at the Lowell Graded School, and they sell their incredible products to the community so folks can spend their dollars locally around the holiday season. And my husband and I have been hosting a concert series in Westfield at the First Congregational Church to help raise money to rebuild and restore that historic building. And we've been doing that for 2 years and been having lots of fun bringing the community together around food and music.
And is that well attended?
Yeah, we've had about 30 to 50 folks every month, and at the Cat Right show that we had this fall, we packed the house and had over 100 people. So it's been really fun to bring people together around music and get them into this incredible historic building that and work hard to raise money to continue to restore and preserve that building. If
you were elected on November 8th, if you were elected, what do you hope to accomplish short-term and long-term? Yeah. So the top priorities for me are growing our local economy, supporting working Vermonters, and making sure that government works for all parts of the kingdom. So for me, examples of that are reducing the property tax burden for the average Vermonter, bringing high-speed internet and cell phone service to our community, being a strong voice around local decision-making so that our schools and communities can make the decisions themselves about how we move forward with Act 46, and making sure that folks have a strong voice in alternative energy siting projects. Can you explain Act 46 for people that don't know what that is? Yeah, so Vermont has one of the I would say best school systems in the nation. But at the same time, our schools are struggling with declining enrollment and rising costs. Many of the towns in my districts are seeing tax increases while at the same time being forced to cut vital programming. And so I don't think Montpelier should impose any one-size-fits-all mandates on our community. Act 46 that was passed last session created a timeline for communities to
make their own choices, but move towards consolidation. And I think that created a lot of confusion and certainly a massive amount of work for our school boards without any guaranteed outcomes and limited evidence of cost savings or improved educational outcomes. So I think the state should support school boards and communities making their own decisions about their schools. Ultimately, they're in the best position to decide what's best for their kids in their community, and I think Act 46 needs to reflect that.
Yeah. This ties in with something else that I just barely thought of. Unfunded mandates.
Yeah.
You probably have heard about that, and a lot of people feel really that unfunded, the state tells you to do this, and they don't tell you where to get the money.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's a real problem here in Vermont, and I think often there's well-intentioned legislation, but that sometimes our government rushes into it before we have time to think about what the long-term ramifications of the implementation of the bill would be. And I think an example of that is the organics recycling regulations that are kind of coming down the pike. I think it's a great concept to try and get all of the organic food waste out of our landfill and turn that into soil and compost that we can use in our communities. But the timeline for implementation of this, I think, well exceeds our community's capacity to handle it. It will require all families and businesses to divert food waste, and that our communities have a place to process that. And talking to the waste management districts and the individual towns in my community, I don't think we're really ready to accommodate that yet. So it's well-intentioned legislation, but it's going to have significant costs in our community, and I'm not sure we're really ready to handle that. So I look forward to being a strong voice for rural communities in Montpelier to help us be thoughtful and maybe a little bit more deliberate in how we put together legislation to make sure that it doesn't have unintended consequences for our communities.
Okay. Can you please give us your contact information if anybody has any questions for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage anyone to check out my website, Katherine Sims, sims.org. You can always give me a call at 802-673-7376, or find me on Facebook at Katherine Sims for House.
Sounds good. I wish you all the best in the election.
Thanks.
And who knows, we might have you on again.
Certainly a pleasure talking with you, Terry. I always enjoy it.
This is Terry DeFazio for Dial It Up. And November 8th is election day. So if you don't vote, don't complain to me. Bye now.